The story begins when an ordinary student named Mamori Ta is chased by a gigantic beast. Understand how and why he landed in such a situation, he curses the goddess who is responsible for putting him in the situation. Suddenly the voice of Goddess Vices appears and she confirms that she is the one who has summoned him in his whole class. She adds that it is understandable if Taya is confused because he has been suddenly brought into a new world. However, he is among the chosen ones. She then addresses a group and the people, telling them that they are the group of heroes. But before that, she checked the aptitudes of all and found out that Mamori Tala has been discarded. Suddenly Tala comes forward, thoroughly anxious, the goddess, that she summoned all the chosen ones to destroy the heroes. But Tala is the only one in this group with an aptitude that is the lowest ranked possible. The goddess fears that Tala might come in the way of the heroes with higher aptitudes. The goddess commands him to obediently remove himself from the group. A frenzied tabble at the goddess has always been a social outcast, and also he has never been the main character material, who has summoned the whole class out of nowhere, and now she is discarding him out of her own inconvenience. He tries to terrorize others that one day even they will not be needed by those women and will be discarded like trash. However, classmates are not worried because they have their own reasons. To his horror, it suddenly dawns on Tale that his class is treating him as if doesn't exist anymore. It is then a girl named Sayag speaks up on behalf of Tower, is unfairly treated, and he is their classmate. The goddess refers to Sagu as an S-rank hero, and says that Sag is responsible for uniting the whole class, and she hopes that Sagu is wise enough to understand the important decision taken by the goddess. Sagu protests that it's not like TA chose to become an E. Rank Taylor is relieved. If Saga is going to take his side, then everyone in the class will listen to her as she is the class's committee member. It is then Sagu roars to the class that they cannot agree to it. Suddenly, the goddess thrashes Sag. A girl falls flat on her face to the ground. The goddess pretends to be teary-eyed and puts the blame unfortunate accident on Tala and says that such incidents are bound to happen when an E ranker is around. She begs ostentatiously to Taylor to stop being selfish and surrender himself to his fate. Taylor reaches out to an unconscious Sagu and tries to bring her back to consciousness. However, one of his classmates kicks him away and warns him to stay away from Sagu. Taylor looks around in sheer horror as he sees his classmates gather around him, bouncing him and eyeing him in disdain. All are chanting just one phrase, and that is to discard memory. Tada, the goddess, witnesses the whole situation in deep satisfaction and announces that with everyone's consent, Memory Tala is eyes filled with tears, and the goddess assures him that his death will not go in vain and the experience will be everyone over here. Tala's heart is filled with contempt for his classmates who ditched him in this difficult situation, and he feels that it is useless to shed tears for such traitors. Hold back his tears, as it is not something worth being embarrassed about, and he must take pride in it. Ta'ala angrily shuts her up and tells her to go to hell. Despite his scornful, the goddess creates a whirlwind. Everything goes dark and silent. When Taya finally regains consciousness, he finds himself in a lone and desolate place, cries his heart out, but there is no one to acknowledge his agony. Taylor has no idea about what to do and where. Next, he suddenly remembers the goddess stating that some skills will be awarded to them once they reach the other world. He puts his fist forward and a status window opens. Just like that, in a game, Taylor starts to get a wave of excitement and is completely unaware that an enormous bull-like beast called Minotaur is standing behind him and is about to ambush him. The beast leads a deafening roar that enforces Tower to turn around. He successfully manages to dodge its attack, but trips on a huge rock and falls down. He miserably wonders whether he is going to die here like this. Suddenly he spots a cave and dashes towards it. He thinks that there must be others who got expelled just like him. He must find them and collaborate with them. He calls out loudly for others to help him. However, all he comes across is a dried-up skeleton. He can hear monstrous footsteps trailing him from behind and thinks glumly that being discarded means there is no way. He decides not to give up and thinks that he has skills, and he must find a way out by using those skills. He reminds himself that he is a hero after all, albeit an ranked 1. But when he activates the status window, he is able to see 3 statistics: paralyze, sleep, and poison. A baffled Taylor is uncertain about those statistics and furiously wonders there is even a hero who clears a game with sleep paralysis and poison. questions himself whether that is the reason he was discarded, because he doesn't seem useful from any angle. His skills are futile. A determined Taylor decides to fight back, because if he is going to die either struggle as much as he could, the Minotaur is about to attack him when he uses his paralysis skill. Surprised the skill actually works and the beast is frozen to the ground, Taylor compares his situation to the one usually encountered in online games and realizes that the outcomes of both are quite similar. Where he is having a 1-on-1 way in a closed area, and there is no time limit, so in real time as well. If these conditions are met, then he might not face any problem. Taylor gains confidence and uses the poison skill, Minotaur, and to his delight, it works pretty well still. He is not sure about certain factors such as how long will the paralysis and poison last, and are there any restrictions. Using them decides to gain a complete understanding of these skills. He thanks the goddess for the first time for providing him with ample time. He addresses Minotaur that he will watch it until its death. He calculates that it took an hour for the beast to die completely. Taylor notices that he leveled up as well. Soon he borrows a mantle from that nearby skeleton and wonders where it belongs to a discarded one. As well, Taylor vows that he will live no matter what circumstances he has to face in plans to avenge the corrupt goddess elsewhere in a deep, enticing forest. There is a pond of crystal clear water where a beautiful elf is taking a bath. She senses something, gets dressed, and delves even deeper into the woods. The whole is echoing with some strange sounds, and it can be seen that the noise is emerging from a large engraved leads to a cave-like opening inside the cave. Taylor is using his paralysis and poison skills to take down chicken fast, humongous beasts, but no matter how many he takes down, more appear on his face. To his despair, closer look, Taylor is perched on a mound of rock, and those bird beasts are climbing towards him from all directions. Taylor begins to curse that goddess again, who has deliberately put him into this troublesome situation. Now he has gained some insight on his abilities. When his target enters his field of view, he stretches out his arm like a turret. The skill is invoked when he calls out its name, like poison, sleep, and paralyze. Now he already that paralyze and sleep lasts for an hour only, however poison lasts until death. He has also measured the range of attack, which is approximately 20 m. He wonders whether these dungeon monsters are way stronger. He remembers that back then, when he defeated the Minotaur, he received a notification that he had leveled up. According to that goddess, this whole system has been optimized to be easily understandable with their words. Knowledge, in other words. The whole system is user-friendly, but still, he thinks that jumping from level 1 to 258 is outrageous. He knows that the goddess has no intention of letting him escape the cave-like dungeon. First place, he still remembers her acrid remarks that Taylor is a failure and is an unwanted existence. Need to bash that goddess, and then we'll bid goodbye to this hell. But first he decides to slay those chickens. He uses his poison skills a number of times to attack those bird brains, and then gets lost in a flashback when his whacking the hell out of him, and poor Taylor is repeatedly apologizing to his father. His father then shuts him out in the veranda and warns him not to scream. Poor Taylor is filled with regret that if only he listened to them, would have been kinder. A cold and hungry Taylor lies down on the hard floor and thinks remorsefully that the people would have definitely appreciated him. It is then a neighbor spots the unfortunate child and calls the cops. Parents begin to out and torture him more, and he is more apologetic as ever. Taylor snaps out of that flashback and realizes that his life has been hell all along. Taylor concentrates on his current skills and thinks that soon paralyze will lose its effect, and if that happens, he will use paralyze again. He is confused between the next attack, whether he should use poison or the third layer, sleep. He decides to use sleep as his next attacking skill, and to his delight, the chickens begin to feel drowsy. Taylor is elated that the combined effects are working, as currently he used paralyze, poison, and somewhat lagged sleep. So even if paralyze wears off, sleep and poison will still be in effect. He comes to know that it is actually possible to defeat the enemies with poison without allowing them to move at all. Soon, stumbling army of chicken heads. As experience points, he feels an unexpected surge of contempt towards the god and his classmates, and realizes that unreasonable things will continue to occur in that world no matter what. There are people who won't listen to you, and there are people who don't deserve to be alive. Taylor guesses that if they are trying to kill him, then he would be faster and just kill them instead. Because unlike back Then, at his disposal, Tao watches the army of chickens getting slayed in front of him, and his levels also shoot up swiftly. Taylor is flipping through a book called Encyclopedia on the Forbidden Arts when he comes across a page where an ominous warning is engraved that he should be wary of the Soul Eaters. Taylor wonders if that is a monster's name. He believes that the book contained a lot of valuable information regarding forbidden arts. He then borrows a rope, fellow discarded skeleton. He comes across a safe that is opened by magic. There is a crystal orb, and as soon as he touches it, it begins to flash. Due to magic, the safe wall begins to slide, and he remarks, "The room doesn't look very comfortable." He wonders how many days it has been in this dungeon. A day, 3 days, or a week? Decides to hurry as he doesn't have enough food. He then enters a wide hallway that has stairs leading up. While climbing the stairs, Tower thinks that it has been a while since he has entered this area of ruins. He is certain that the building is man-made, and there also exists a safe room. He surmises that the exit may not be far away. He senses slight creeping sound, and within no time gigantic spiders begin to approach him when he immediately uses his paralyzed skill. He is satisfied that his skills are growing, and he is becoming familiar with them. He then uses his poison skills to finish off those crawly insects. Apparently, if he continues using his skills and sharpens his mastery, things he can do would increase. In other words, he will continue leveling up. Taya is satisfied that all his 3 skills have been able to target multiple enemies. He can precisely identify enemies within his field of vision, then uses the appropriate skill. His enemies can be perceived in his mind and will be hit by that skill. One is that he doesn't have to wreck his voice, however. A better one is that turning large numbers of monsters experience points has become a piece of cake. The disadvantage is that he cannot do anything against attacks or blind spots. For this reason, he cannot afford the tiniest shred of negligence until his skills. This reason he has developed an institutional sense of all sorts. Soon he senses a sharp hissing sound come behind, and instantly an enormous reptilian monster appears in front of him. Tawar thinks that the distinction of letting him go in one piece. On watching closer, Tia finds out that the monster is a freaking undead. Wonders whether his skills will work against such a giant and undead. However, he knows that he can make sure of those things one after another. If that doesn't work, then he will instantly die anyway. Soon he creates something out of his magic and declares that it will be his guinea pig elsewhere. Someone finds an injured cat, but doesn't have the key to take it to the vet. Like Ta'ala, the person is none other than Kashima Kubato, who considers herself a coward. Then Tala comes along to his surprise and tells her that she is a kind coward, and he prefers it this way. It is. Someone loudly calls out to her, and while she is brought back to present, she apologizes to the girl named Ikuzaba, chides her for being inattentive. Ikuzaba urges Kubato to rehearse her lines. Kubato begins to repeat that Class 2 Deg has gotten swept up in something unthinkable. They were transported to another world, and they all have to work together, but all of the CES rank and D rank people do whatever they want, and they can't keep up with them. C and D ranks must all work together and create a group. Ikusaba slaps Kubato's back and elles her efforts, saying that she can do it if she puts her mind into it. She adds that if they work together, their chances of survival will increase, as it is all about having the right people for the right jobs. Ikusaba insists that since she is a B rank here, she can take them all to places. She then tells Kubato that the ladder is D rank and a real airhead completely empty, but she can always use her assets to gather as many stupid guys to become their shield as they already managed to persuade the girls. Kubato doesn't understand Ayava's purpose behind all that scheming, and the latter tells her that she has heard that there is going to be a practice session on killing enemies soon, so they have to gather more people before the ranks and the ranks leave us. Ikusaba explains that they are talking about the people who selfishly abducted their class, and they cannot trust them at all to send them back to their world. Also, leave fighting wicked enemies to those other heroes that are brimming with motivation before they make their exit. Like Ter, they would much rather create an organization that allows them to do what they want. Ikusaba threatens Kubato that Class 2C is now a thing of the past, and even Kubato doesn't feel like getting killed by someone. Poor Kubato's eyes are filled with tears as she is very scared. So she silently calls out to Tower to tell her what she must do next. Meanwhile, back at the ruins, Ta'ao comes to know that the old skeleton was a great sage according to the book. While He has already put the great snake-like undead monster to sleep in the book. The great sage narrates that his name is Angland Byret, and the people call him the Great Sage, so they even call him the Dark Hero. The goddess forcibly threw him in a place like this. This is because he has become an eyesore to the goddess' vices. Taylor realizes that this isn't just a place to dispose of ranks, it is also a place to get rid of any and all people who the goddess deems inconvenient. Taylor thinks with great disparagement that the goddess is nothing but an evil carnation, and he suddenly remembers that he always wanted to become a kind, cowardly person, and yet here he is erecting towers of carcasses, unable to feel single thing. Suddenly he bursts into a maniacal laughter when he feels a gush of strong wind behind his back. The direction of the wind, he reaches an area with a gate. Judging from the airflow, he guesses that the exit. Nearby, he notices an indentation between the double doors and decides to find something that fits inside. Soon, he finds a sculpted head with a stone on its forehead. He is alert because he knows that this is one of the traps activate. If he tries to extract the stone from the forehead, he wonders whether the sculpture head is actually a monster. Taylor analyzes that since his level has suited to an abominable height, he has somewhat become proficient reading a monster's behavior. If it is a monster, then he can easily use his paralyze, poison, and sleep method out. Taylor's stamina is giving up, so he cannot prolong the matter deliberately. He decides to hit the statue head. Paralyzed skill, Taylor keeps himself at a reasonable distance from the stone head, thrusts his hand forward, and paralyzed skill, but before he can even complete shouting, paralyze, some sharp rays emit from the pierce his body, catching him off guard. The large head begins to inch forward, pulling its magnanimous body forwards. Taylor realizes in alarm that the head actually belongs to the Soul Eater, intimidated by the Soul Eater that tries to hide behind a rock wall. As it dawns on him that the Soul Eater knows what move he is about to make. Also, it can read him like a book. He is unable to figure the sharp beams emitted by the head, and those beams most likely get emitted the very moment he shows his intention to attack. Ta'a has gotten the complete idea. Statue-like monster is the boss of the labyrinth. Taylor is in a great dilemma because he cannot use the skills. Their names are called out aloud. Also, he has to maintain a certain minimum volume. He wonders whether he should turn back for now and raise his levels further. He then shrugs off the idea because he has already wiped out nearly all monsters, so there are barely any experience points left, so leveling will be difficult. Another troublesome comes into his mind that what if he gives up clearing that labyrinth? Suddenly, the goddess's image imprints his mind, flashing a sardonic expression, and he immediately refutes the idea. He angrily springs up and decides to kill that rogue goddess or die trying to defeat the soul leader. Suddenly, a strange, dark-colored slime cell erupts out, the Soul Eater's mouth splattering everywhere. The blobs of slime begin to take their form by squirm. Twitching, they turn into the most disgusting creatures Taylor has ever seen. He decides to use his paralyzed skin, but a face begins to wriggle and jiggle inside its slimy hood, and it is then Taylor realizes in sheer fright that faces belong to the victims. It is then the soul leader leads out the most horrific laughter Taylor has ever heard, and he senses that he has heard this maniacal chuckling somewhere. Taylor remembers his Kiel classmate that when he was being discarded, it is as if they were enjoying his reaction. The soul leader commands those slimy creatures to attack Taylor. Taylor then uses his paralyzed skill, and to his satisfaction, the skills obstructed despite them being in the Soul Eater's line of sight. This may be because his attack wasn't directed towards the boss's own body, but a considerate Taylor is unable to cast poison on those miserable creatures. Can be termed as his fellow comrades. He begins to explain to those victims that he is different from them and doesn't care about monsters. However, these slimy, wretched human beings, in a very pitiable state, have been hardships as himself, so he holds himself to cast the poison skill on them. A prominent smirk appears on the Soul Eater's face as if enjoying every bit of Taylor's situation. Suddenly more souls in deep despair emerge from the horrendous mass, calling out to air to help them, and agonized Taylor wards them off, screaming in a tumultuous tone that they come near him. Tower keeps on pleading for someone to help him and know his struggle. It is then the try Soul Eater edges forward and roars in a trembling manner that he will save Tae, but somehow Tae manages to overcome hypnotizing effect and shouts paralyze. The large figurine begins to tumble and crack, and it is then Taylor moves forward and chides that all the strong and arrogant people give out the same sarcastic expression when trying to break down a seemingly weaker opponent, and this is where they get checkmate when they show carelessness from their side. The Soul Leader mistakenly thought that it had overpowered Tala and that TA cannot attack it. Directly, Taya tells him that he is used to playing background mob character Ta Mamori. He knows how to play the role of a pitiful weak guy, and this is how he fooled Bear. Boss of the labyrinth, Taylor then fires up his mighty poison skill towards the Soul Eater, and the latter leads out anguish scream, and Taylor mocks at it to taste the medicine of its own victims, it ridiculed so ruthlessly. While the magnanimous figurine crumbles in front of him, Taylor realizes that if an enemy under paralysis tries hard enough move its body, it will receive additional damage. Taylor keeps on ranting that how the goddess, his classmates, and the Soul Eater thought he was the weakest, their overbearance made him win, and he is still alive soon. He paralyzes one more time and puts it to sleep for eternity with all those unfortunate slime figurines lying lifeless before Taya checks out his status and finds out that he has leveled up a lot, and by looking at the exuberant amount of experience he has gained, he must have hurt many poor souls who had been entrapped by the Soul Eater. Apologizes to them for the pain he caused them unexpectedly. There is a sharp rumbling and cracking sound coming out of the bust, and soon a hazy mist emerges out of the Soul Eater's cave like mouth to Ag guesses that the whom the Soul Eater trapped might be getting released. The mist turns into a blaring tornado, and Tower feels resounding directly into his head. One of the souls expresses his deep gratitude for releasing his soul from the clutches of the Soul Eater. He adds that he was so glad when Tower sensed a minotaur from his behind. A puzzled Tower looks around. Another soul tells him that he was so happy when he took away his mantle. A lady's soul cheerfully acknowledges him that she felt so refreshed when he killed those monsters that put her to death. Tala is delightfully. The souls who were trapped by the Soul Eater are directly communicating with him. Also, they have been watching him all along, checking out his every move. One of them discloses to Tyler that before he was eaten away by the Eater, he hid some gems behind a nearby rock. He advises Tower to make good use. Then suddenly a soul clad in a hooded robe steps forward, and Taylor is baffled by the similarity of robes. A hooded figure slides out the hood, and it is revealed that the person is none other than the Dark Hero. The great sage Angan is trying to say something, but his voice is inaudible. Taylor wonders whether he is obstructed by something. Taylor tries to read his lips and deciphers that the great sage is trying to say thank you. As the soul depart, they present their final request to Taya, and that is to defeat the goddess at any cost. Taya appears that he have any obligation to respond to that request, but still he grits his teeth and clenches his hands tightly together. In the end, he will force the crooked goddess to settle this debt. Finally, he comes out of the enormous gates dungeon and is greeted by the first rays of sunlight that throws him into a state of nostalgia. It is stated that a piece of information prevailed in the whole continent that the demons who resided in the far north there had begun to march towards the south, the cornerstone of the north, the kingdom of Magnar's pride, the great fortress knight. Wall has fallen. Each and every country is forced to plan their own preventive measures. The kingdom of Alien, whose highest authority is none other than Goddess Vices, is no exception. In short, rulers, conquerors, fugitives, the pawns have all been assembled on the game board of the continent, and the age of upheaval is about to begin. A young elf is trying to ward off some heroes who are toying with her. She's on a run while they are chasing her, attacking her, and entangling her whenever they gain the opportunity. The AL ponders that this is not unexpected from the Lin heroes, as they are the descendants of the old heroes who had been summoned to this world. Their blood grants strength and magical powers, and she believes that her pursuers belong to that arrogant lineage. The poor elf dashes through all the darts and attacks by the group of 4 that any mercenary may know. The group is named the White Savages Walker and consists of the Sword God, the overwhelming force, the demonic heavenly body, and the Fang Paw. Frets over that those heroes are extremely skilled and equally fish, so it will be really hard for her to shake them off. Her heart is thumping fast as she knows that if she cannot escape them, then she would have to fight them. The elf closes her eyes and tries to create a powerful magical aura to call upon the regalia of the spirit CFO, Zega. She chants for the 3 spirits to possess her body and give her their strengths. It can be seen that the 3 spirits enter her body with a swish, and the elf is completely transformed. The elf knows that her opponent's purpose to capture her alive. Otherwise, they wouldn't avoid fatal attacks, and they wouldn't hold back so much. Instead, heroes are focused on draining her stamina and willpower in order to mock her. However, she decides to make use of their advances and escape. The elf then amplifies her 5 senses, and she suddenly sees, pressurizing her to the extent that she is unable to breathe properly. She feels an overwhelming sense of death, and wonders whether she will be fighting that overwhelming power. Suddenly she hears a rustling sound, the thicket to her left, and something distressing happens. Meanwhile, Tala is enjoying peace by sitting dungeon gate, devouring a juicy apple and reading the encyclopedia of forbidden arts that Angland left behind. He learned several things after carefully going through that book. Firstly, he comes to know that the Vices has a passive skill called the Goddess Enchantment, which creates a barrier around her that deflects all status ailments without fail. Tala is a little subdued, but is assured that the book's contents are original and trustworthy. Success rates of status ailment skills in this world are extremely low. Even the most proficient users as their main fighting strategy. The reality sinks inside Tala that because of the 2 adobe mentioned point discarded him. However, the question arises why Taylor's skills succeed every time, even in an RPG. That would never happen. Something strikes his mind that what if Ranky means something extra that exists outside the norm? Now he doesn't consider himself as a chosen one. But some things make sense. There is one more thing which is peculiar, that is inside the encyclopedia. There is a scroll titled Spellbook, incantations covered in characters he cannot read when he was summoned to this world. He and others, Isis, who automatically transforms the characters used in this world into the Japanese language, but characters remain graphics, that the writing is even beyond the goddess's understanding. This means that something that even the goddess cannot grasp is recorded in the book. He ponders that even if the mysteries of his extra Ranky and these unreadable incantations are solved, he still has a lot to find out over here. He nowhere to go anyway, so he will find those answers. Eventually, at a distance, he finds some tiny slimes fighting each other. On close examination, he finds out that 5 slimes are harassing a single slime. He checks out his status window and finds out that now his paralyzed and poison skills have been a little customized as they both gained release option. Paralyzed can also be partially released, which is handy when one wants to make somebody talk while their movements are restricted. The Poen skill has non-lethal option now, which is for when TA doesn't want to kill his opponent or maybe just torture them. He is astonished to find that even monsters fight. Watches for a while and notices that the victim's slime, despite its size, is putting up much resistance, so he decides to help it. He paralyzes and then poisons the oppressor slimes and decides to use them as his guinea pigs, so he just a button to switch on the non-lethal poison option so that the slimes only have to bear excruciating pain. Death. He leaves them in agony for some time and then switches off the non-lethal button again. He is assured that the slimes have been taught a lesson, so he orders them to disperse. They comply immediately. However, victim slime stays behind as it doesn't want to leave Tala's side. Tala orders it to find its own path. However, the slime stretches itself and blocks his way. Taylor realizes that since this slime doesn't exhibit any bloodless quality of a monster, so in this way it is quite similar to Tawae, as both are outcast. The problem is that Tara cannot bring a monster into the town, so the slime transforms itself in a belt and clings itself around Tala's waist, instructs the slime to notify him when someone is nearby, as he knows that monsters have detection skills. Decides to name the slime Pijaru, because all it says is Piggy. Suddenly a dagger dashes towards Tala and is about to swipe over Tala's head, but Piggy pulls him towards the safer side and the sword plunges into a tree trunk. Is flabbergasted, and then he spots a burly man perched on a tree branch. Tala finds something shady about that person and wonders whether he is looking for someone. Meanwhile, that shady guy is Ara, one of the heroes of Divine White Savage Walker Group. The heroes are quite suspicious of TAA as they wonder what he is doing deep inside the forest, make a guess that he might be an accomplice to their prey and must be killed immediately. The heroes threaten to tell them about the whereabouts of that elf woman. They are looking for their intimidations make Tala furious that he is actually gritting his teeth. However, he composes himself and pretends to be a lonesome wander. However, Zale sneers at him and says that the day is unlucky for TA and then calls out Bradus to use his brand new Simit to kill Tara. Bradus flips his weapon expertly and mocks that he has also been thinking about taste some blood. Sini comments that combining the swordsmanship inherent to his heroic bloodline and using wire to control the sword that's Brad's original swordsmanship, he adds that Bradus has a god gift of moving sword from afar and making it dance in the air. That's why he is titled the Sword God. Bradus decides to cut Taylor's arms first, and then he will be dealing with his legs. Afterwards, the neck will be followed in the end. Distressed and terrified, Taylor begs them to let him go, as he doesn't want to die a worthless death in this place. However, Bradus is adamant to kill him. Tala's facial expressions change, and he willingly thrusts out his arms. Bradus can easily chop them off, but instantly he shouts paralyzed within seconds. The heroes are weapons to their sheer surprise. It is then Taylor states that his abnormal skills also work on humans as well. That rascal goddess is a special case. Then Zash is petrified, but still he finds it impossible that a single man can stun 4 heroes. Tae comments that still he feels that his skill is a complete failure. Tawar continues that before he ends this, he must send them off with one thing, as now they all know that impossible things are nowadays so. For this reason, Taar decides to break the rule of the world and uses poison skill against them all as tooth for a tooth and an eye. For an eye, instantly all heroes are killed off and lay lifeless before him. Talib that this is the first time he has killed humans, and he knows that human life is one thing that cannot be replaced, but still, he feels no remorse for killing those scoundrels. Taylor then decides to skim through their belongings and decides to take only money, as he can be easily tracked if he confiscates their equipment. As well, suddenly Pigum Maru notified him about an upcoming danger. Suddenly, he feels a tornado coming his way with immense. Taylor begins to shiver in terror, but then remembers that those heroes were talking about a woman. He doesn't mind running away if she is harmless, but somehow he doesn't get that same ruthless feeling from her like he did from those guys. The other side, the elf woman, is still feeling the previous aura of death nearing her, and it is also detection skills. Strangely, that strong killing intent vanishes. Instantly, she moves forwards completely. Tala is already ready to rope her. He immediately fires paralyzed at the elf woman, and the latter freezes down to the ground. She begins to cackle and shake due to immobility, and Taylor heads towards her cautiously. He tells her seems to be prepared to fight, but doesn't emit a killing intent. He believes that, unlike those fiends, he seems capable of civilized talk, so for this reason, he is only locking her movement for insurance. The elf